And I'm just pointing out that you're talking about someone's mental well-being. You're talking about their self-worth. You're talking about their emotional stability. You're talking about increasing their prolonged stress.
Very hard
You're
to have this back
talking
and
about
forth if you just
creating
keep
verbal
talking and
abuse,
talking.
discrimination,
I got another
bullying,
question.
and all of these forms of mistreatment. You're causing all of these things, and you're just like, this is hate speech. I just want to be a giant piece of garbage when I wake up in the morning. Like, that's literally what this is.
We need to get to something more substantive. Go ahead, Jake.
First Amender is back to argue once again on the trans issue. He debates Jake Rattlesnake and Alex of PWF, along with this dude William. I don't know who this guy is or where he's from, but these two versus these two. First Amender gets triggered very easily, almost has a meltdown, pretty much has a meltdown on camera. And Jake and Alex here keep their cool, totally schooling him, sending him, showing the crybaby that he is. Let's see how Jake Rattlesnake does against the First Amender.
So I want to address the actual question, right? Rather than this ridiculous nonsense, right? The question is misgendering hate speech, right?
I really want to ask a question for Jake and Alex as well. How do you both decide what pronouns to give somebody?
But how do we decide what pronouns we use? I just look at them and I ascertain that they're a male or female. I understand that I can be tricked by somebody if they were to do a really good performance. I've been to Thailand and I've walked down the red light district, so I understand that you can be tricked. But you know, 99.9% of the time, we're going to be able to look at somebody and ascertain what sex they are.
That's called using their gender expression. You're looking at their gender expression and making a call. And as you just said,
there's a big difference between something being hate speech and you choosing out of the sake of politeness to call. So, for example, if there's a trans person on the panel and they seem cool and nice, then I'm just out of the sake of politeness, I will call them that, right? But even if I don't, that's not hate speech. It's my First Amendment protected right, because if I believe there are two genders, that's my belief. I believe there are two genders. That's what.
But nobody is asking the government to create laws to force you to not misgender somebody.
Well, that's
we're just saying,
what happened in Canada.
Well, okay, but we're not Canada. We're the United States of America.
Right,
but I'm arguing is misgendering hate speech. Hate speech, even if it is labeled hate speech, still has nothing to do with the First Amendment, because you can still incite hate speech, provided that they're not technically fighting words or like words that incite violence. Right, in the United States. So you can say hate speech, right? You can go outside and be a dick. But the problem is that doesn't really revoke the concept that it is hate speech. So stop invoking the First Amendment. It has nothing to do with this.
Well,
right?
no, I think some people do dislike
that by making your unserious comparison by being called highness or lord, right? You are dodging the reality that misgendering has real world consequenses.
Well, how do you know?
Higher suicide rates. It causes job.
Here's his logic. It's, the First Amendment, misgendering someone is protected under the First Amendment, which that is true. It is protected under the First Amendment. However, he is saying that, well, listen, it doesn't incite violence. But then he goes on to kind of say how it causes violence because misgendering someone leads them to unaliving themselves. Well, I mean, isn't that violence? So by his own logic, how is that speech then protected underneath the First Amendment by his logic? And yet, second of all, if they amended the First Amendment to include hate speech that is not protected or something, I'm pretty sure he would have no problem with that. He would not be sitting there, even though his name's the First Amender, I'm pretty sure he would have no issue with that being allowed. He'd probably be like, yeah, you know what? It's fine. Let these bigots get punished for misgendering someone because it leads to violence.
Discrimination. It causes medical mistreatment. That is not the case in being called the Lord or Highness or not being called Lord or Highness. So understanding that it does cause higher suicide rates to deliberately misgender people, and it does cause job discrimination.
Are you just going to filibuster the entire debate, or are you going to let other people talk?
Can I please finish my question?
All right.
Yeah,
what I want to do is I'm going to give you, in case you had any thoughts, Jake, you've been patiently waiting in case you had anything you want to mention.
Yeah, I would like to understand what our interlocutors here agree is psychological distress. Can you please define for me what psychological harm is and how that's quantified?
If you know a certain action is going to potentially cause suicidal ideation or depression in an individual, that would easily be considered hate speech, right? Or psychological distress. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Well,
But that's subjective. You know, so for instance, if they wanted to misgender me and call me a girl, I mean, it would be annoying, but I would just think they were weird. It wouldn't cause me suicidal thoughts. I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I keep getting called a girl. Oh no, I gotta go and unalive myself. Like, different things could trigger different things in people. And that's where lies the problem with this whole hate speech concept and stuff. And there are, by the way, some trans people that don't get offended if you call them by their actual gender. So it's really all subjective.
don't understand why you haven't called me my lord then, because like we said at the start of the debate, that deeply, deeply offends me if you don't call me my lord. And actually, it might make me seriously depressed. No, it's my identity. That's my identity.
Well, I'm not. This debate isn't about misidentifying.
No. It's my identity. I'm telling you, it's my identity. And First Amender, you can be as flippant as you want about this, but that is my identity. I am
Have you
a
been
lord,
to a psychologist where you're like getting dysphoria because people aren't calling you lord, and you're like spending every waking moment of your life where you're literally cutting your own wrists because you're not being called lord on a daily basis? Are you serious? Do you understand how disrespectful of what you are saying on this?
No, I have done that. That has happened.
Show me your arm.
No, it was when I was younger.
Oh, okay, all right.
Jake,
so you never did.
Lord
by the way, those don't go away all the way into adulthood. So yeah, you're lying.
No, I'm not going to.
Well, by the way, First Amender being very offensive, I'm actually getting triggered myself. How dare he question Jake's experience, his lived experience? How dare First Amender asking him to show his arms? How dare you? Do you know how triggering and devastating that could be for Jake to be asked to show the scars on his arms? I am personally offended. I think we need to cancel First Amender, take away his YouTube channel, stop him from saying anything unless he gets down on his knees and apologizes to Jake. This is an outrage.
So if a trans person hasn't cut their arms, then it cannot be.
Right? And I'm telling you the massive difference between respecting someone's gender identity and indulging in your absurd demand.
What, Jake, you're creating a strong argument.
Has not
yes, you exactly.
Hold on, just to be sure that we hear hold on one sec. Okay, Alex, you had a thought.
Yeah, if a trans person has not tried to commit suicide or cut their arms, then you cannot misgender them, right?
That's not what I said.
Well,
so First Amendment, just to be clear, because we were having this back and forth before, just to be clear.
I'm giving an example of somebody who's dealing with actual gender dysphoria, and your ridiculous comparison to Lord. That's a dumb straw man, and it doesn't have anything to do with the argument, right?
First
so
Amendment,
I wanted to go
we
back
get it.
to the fact that you are basically inhibiting into hate speech.
McLovin, relax, McLovin. Okay, so when you walk up to a trans person. And so if I was trying to ascertain in my ignorance the level of damage that was happening to a trans person, would I ask them to show me their arms if they told me about all the distress that they'd gone through? And is that how I would quantify the psychological harm?
But I'm just pointing out the difference. I know that that's not like the 100% test that you would not all trans people are cutting their arms because of their gender dysphoria, but some are.
So then it mustn't be that bad.
And I'm just pointing out that you're talking about someone's mental well-being. You're talking about their self-worth. You're talking about their emotional stability. You're talking about increasing their prolonged stress.
Very hard
You're
to have this back
talking
and
about
forth
creating verbal abuse, discrimination.
I got another question.
And all of these forms of mistreatment. You're causing all of these things, and you're just like, this is hate speech. I just want to be a giant piece of garbage when I wake up in the morning. Like, that's literally what this is.
We need to get to something more substantive. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, no.
I did give you something substantive.
I know.
Causing emotional distress, cognitive damage, behavioral changes, and physical symptoms.
First Amendment, I know, but the impression was off. It wasn't super substantive. Let's go to Jake.
So, you still haven't quantified harm for me, by the way. But if they did say to me that they were going through all of this harm, why should I believe them?
You're talking about the emotion. Okay, fine. I will quantify it for you, right?
No, I'm saying why should I believe
emotional
them? That was the question.
Or mental distress caused by actions, speech, or experiences that negatively impact your well-being, their self-worth, emotional stability. You happy? Is that okay? Now we can move on instead of playing dumb. All right,
now,
cool.
Why should I believe them? Why should I believe them, First Amender? You tell me. Why should I believe them?
Because they might have gender dysphoria.
Okay, well, I have told you about my own emotional distress and the fact that I've been to psychologists and I've had all of these terrible things happen upstairs right here.
You have
okay?
not
And you
been
don't
to a
believe me.
psychologist
So
being called
why don't
Lord.
you
Are
believe
you
me?
serious?
First Amender. It's
Jake,
my identity.
What?
First
No
Amendment,
one is
you're falling into
discriminating
this trap
against
by
you.
trying to argue with this.
No.
This is not a gender identity. You're not
So you're
talking
saying
about
that you
gender.
shouldn't just believe people
This
on
isn't-
face value when they tell you things?
Jake,
Guys, this
you
is
are
ridiculous.
not
This is actually
arguing
oppression.
about gender
That's so
identities.
stupid.
Have you looked
Okay,
at the
hold
prompt?
on. All
This
right.
is about
One second.
gender
You're using
identity.
an
This is
analogy.
my
Let's hear
personal
from William.
identity, guys.
It's
I
a
know
bad
that
analogy.
William's been
identity.
waiting
No,
a
it's
while.
actually
All right,
a really
gentlemen,
good
I hate to do
analogy.
this. I just
What-
because
what-
William has been forgive me, just because William has been waiting for a while, so I do want to hear from William because it has been a while, and then I promise Alex will come back to you, and then Jake, and then 1stAmender. So William, go ahead.
Thanks, James. Your analogy is bad, Jake. It's called a straw man because you're making up an argument that we're not making and trying to have us argue against that, but we're not making that argument, okay? You're not talking about gender when you talk about my lord. If I really wanted to avoid gendering you at all, I could do that, and I could just use gender-neutral language. I could use they, or I could just call you by your name, and that is how I can talk to you respectfully. I don't
Will,
have
that's
to. You
not a
don't.
straw
You can't.
man.
You cannot control every aspect of language around me, and that's not what transgender people are trying to do. Transgender people aren't trying to control all aspects of language. They say it would be polite if you called me this type of pronoun. You don't have to. You don't go to jail if you don't have to. But if you want to be considerate, if you want to care about these individuals, then you need to understand that this type of language can cause distress. And if you believe the scientific research that does prove that, then you would want to be respectful. You want to have empathy for these people, and you want to call them the respectful pronouns that they ask for, or just use gender neutral language.
Sure. Okay,
Easy
Will,
solution.
Yeah, they're not trying to control the language, but this is what you need to say. So therefore, yes, we're trying to control language. Like they try to always frame it as a polite issue. It's the same thing as not saying you're welcome or thank you to someone after they done something for you, or saying bless you if they sneeze. It's the same type of deal. You know, except no one's getting canceled if they don't say, bless you after someone sneezes, or if they don't hold the door open for someone or something like that. Those are things of politeness. But no one's losing their job over those things. No one's being labeled a bigot if they don't do that. No one's being labeled some kind of phobe if they don't do these things. However, you are labeling people who don't call people by their preferred pronouns bigots and transphobes if they don't do these things. And you're also trying to affect their livelihood by labeling these things, because if they get labeled a transphobe, call up their job. If they don't do what you say, call up their job and say, hey, listen, this person was making transphobic comments on Twitter the other day. Do you really want someone that's employed at your job that makes these kind of bigoted comments toward trans people? Yeah, listen, it might not reflect good on your company. So listen, I'm not telling you to do anything, but I'm just letting you know. Bye. That's the type of stuff that you people do. So yes, technically it might not be illegal, but you're trying to make it socially acceptable to punish people for this. And don't act like you're not. Because by the way 1stAmender talks, he already associates that if you don't do this, that you're a piece of garbage. He's saying it, that the way he talks, that, you're a piece of garbage if you don't do this. So, well, if you're a piece of garbage, pieces of garbage need to be taught a lesson, don't they?
Again, first of all, that wasn't a straw man, so you got that wrong, and that was a little bit stupid. But second of all, I can't quite understand this. Why won't you respect me, and why won't you respect my identity? I've clearly asked you to call me. Hold on, Will. I've asked you so many times. Hold on, Fogel. All right, I've asked you many times now, Will, to call me my lord. So I want you to respect me, because by your own metrics, this is my identity, and you are not respecting my identity, and it is deeply upsetting. So Will, please, next time you address me, my lord X, my lord Y.
It sounds like you didn't come in with many arguments, Jake, because that's the only thing you're going to keep on repeating and repeating and repeating. I've explained to you why that's not the same thing. I've explained to you why that's a straw man. It's not a gender.
Well, you really haven't. Just calling it a straw man, just saying it's not the same thing, and just saying, well, it's because it's not gender, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's all ridiculous. People have tried to compare this to when people have tried to pretend another race, like Rachel Dolezal or whatever her name was, who pretended to be black and stuff, and people were like, "Oh, this is similar to transgenderism." They always go, "No, it's not. It's different." You know, so Jake Rattlesnake over here comes up and is like, "Oh, call me my lord. That's my identity." You go, "Well, it's not the same, strawman. Not the same." Well, how is it not the same though? You're demanding people to refer to you as a certain way. What? Just because it's not genders? Oh, so we should only call people something that they're not and respect what they want to be called only if it has to do with gender. That's it. Anything else, it's just ridiculous. So nonsense.
Mate,
We
I'm
can
simply
exhibit-
asking
we
for
can
human
exhibit
respect, human
we can
dignity.
exhibit
I'm asking
the-
for respect, and then later we can get to the argument. This is not an argument. This is just me asking for you to respect my humanity.
We
So
can-
can
Is
we
there
Jake,
start
any
on
other
that?
arguments
we
you
can
have, Jake?
exhibit-
Or
we
do you
can
actually want to talk
exhibit-
about the debate?
One
We can
sec. Okay.
exhibit,
My lord, I'm sorry you've been treated this way so far.
Thank
Jake,
you.
we can exhibit, for example, trans people existing at an endocrinological level. This is also the case at a neurochemical basis. It
I
also
don't care.
exists under the neurobiological basis, right? Understanding that,
irrelevant.
show me where is your allele frequency for, say, being called Lord and your dysphoria of not being called Lord.
First Amender's logic then. Oh, if you're just if you're suffering from it psychologically, then it's justified. Okay, so let's say I have schizophrenia and I say, hey, my TV is talking to me. My TV regularly sends me messages into my brain and it tells me to do things. Are you going to sit there and be justify and be like, oh yeah, you know what? You're right, Vic. The TV is talking to you. Yeah. What kind of conversations did your TV have with you today? What kind of messages did the TV send you today, Vic? No one would go along with that. If I hit my head and all of a sudden thought I was Abraham Lincoln and I dressed like Abraham Lincoln, acted like Abraham Lincoln, and I demanded that everyone refers to me as Honest Abe or Abe Lincoln or Abe or Abraham, people would be like, people wouldn't all of a sudden treat me like Abraham Lincoln, book me for appearances like, oh my gosh, Abe Lincoln's going to be here. The Abe Lincoln. No, people would say, yeah, clearly something's going on up here. Same thing in the schizophrenia example. It's all the same stuff. So why is it only justified to respect what a trans person wants to be called?
It's actually irrelevant to the debate because the debate's actually about hate speech. It's not about whether or not you can prove endocrinologically.
Wait, it's about what being hate speech?
It's about whether misgendering is hate speech.
Oh,
It doesn't
not
matter.
calling
Yeah.
Lord, because that's not a gender.
Oh, correct. Yeah, correct.
It's my
Well,
identity.
hate
and
speech
but
is
not
not
as
limited
gender,
to
though.
gender. Wait, hang on.
Identity is
The
limited to
debate is
gender.
It's
about
not just
gender.
limited to gender. Let's just get out of the way. Hate speech is not limited to gender. I'm going to ask a hypothetical question.
That's
What
the
if
debate,
you-
though.
What?
The debate is about misgendering,
Yeah,
not
but
I do want to hear. Hold on.
all
We're
hate
talking
speech.
about. Oh, first we need to agree
I
on
do
what
want to hear
hate
from
speech
Alex
is.
because he's waited. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
Alex.
I'm going to ask a
course.
hypothetical question. What do you know for a fact, right, that Jake is going to be more suicidal if you don't call him my lord? Is that hate speech then? It's a hypothetical.
If it was absolutely true, then I would actually advocate that it is. But
Yeah,
I think
would
it's
too.
I think it's pretty obvious that he's just making up attempting
Guys,
to
I've got
make
something to
a
tell you.
example.
Guys, I just
Okay,
need to
so
tell
He's
you.
just creating
I
a
actually-
red
Oh, what
herring
do you know
fallacy.
when he
Hold on a
said that
second.
he
One
was
sec.
when he
Okay,
said that
hold
he
on.
was
All right,
self-harming
gentlemen,
with his
gentlemen,
This is
wrist?
very
I-
important.
For some reason,
I
he
do
doesn't
have
seem
to-
to have
This is very
any
important.
Hold on,
injuries.
gentlemen.
Oh, okay.
This is very important.
Got Got it. So he's like a liar.
But so
and
in a
he's literally
hypothetical,
saying the
if you truly,
falsehoods.
if you
Got
truly,
it.
Okay, I hate to do this. So I think that Jake had something that he wanted to say, and then I appreciate everybody's enthusiasm. But go ahead, Jake, and then what I think we'll do is go over to William. Go ahead. I have to unmute you now. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate how unbelievably offended I am by this because I'll have you all know that I actually am a lord. I own a small bit of property in Scotland. So I am, by definition, a lord. So you guys, for some reason, I've been telling you I'm a lord this whole time, and you guys haven't been believing me. You've been saying that you don't believe me and you don't believe in my identity. But I'll have you know that it's actually true, and I can verify that. I can actually send through the documentation to James. So you've been denying my identity this entire time. I've told you about the psychological damage. By your own metrics, it is psychological damage that I'm going through by both of your metrics, and you've still been denying it, even though I can show empirically that it's true. So I don't really care anymore about your endocrinological argument.
I love your example of Lord because it actually disproves your entire point. Right. So Lord is a legal term that has legal precedence in certain legal cases. Right. There's
And?
specific legal requirements you need to become a Lord. Gender's not like that. Gender's different, and I know you don't understand that, but that's okay because that's what this whole debate's about.
What a freaking buffoon! What a freaking idiot! He actually sat there, looked on camera, and thought this was a freaking gotcha? What a dumbass! So on one hand, right, becoming a lord, actually, you need to go through this legal process and blah, 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 blah. Oh, but yeah, a man can become a woman? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes more sense than becoming a lord. God, these freaking leftards. They're so left-tarded. Their brain is rotted. Imagine making that an actual case saying, well, you need to do this, this, and that to become a lord. Oh, but to become a woman? Well, you just need to say so.
Gender is about a personal identity that you choose. It's your personal opinion about how you identify. It is not a legal term, right, Jake? Which is the one you were using. You were using a different scenario. That's why it was a red herring, right? That's why
it is my identity, Will. What don't you understand? It's my identity. It's my humanity.
It's a legal term. It's a legal identification, which is different than a personal subjective identity. Is it different, Jake? Or is it the exact same?
I don't care. It's my identity.
It's different.
And you're not respecting my identity.
Different.
It's the same thing. It's identity.
It's not the same thing. It's
my
very
identity,
different
Will, and you're not respecting
impacts.
it.
They have different impacts psychologically. There's different impacts of it psychologically.
Quantify that for me. What's the different impacts psychologically?
I'll give you a chance to respond, Will, but then I do want to let our friend 1stAmender out of the jail here. So, Will, go ahead, and then we'll also have PFW in just a moment. Go ahead, Will.
So, invalidating someone's personal identity in a cultural setting with social aspects is very different, much more psychologically impacting than trying to just deny someone's legal terms socially, right? That's very different. No one is going to mind if you disregard my legal identity. It doesn't matter because my legal identity will still uphold in the court system, right? But my personal identity, which is much more cultural, much more social, if you deny that, then that can impact me socially, which can impact my personal feelings about how I live, what kind of friends I can make, who I can become friends with. It's very different because of those reasons.
Yeah, so my identity as Lord, which is actually an identity, it affects me legally, it affects me socially, it affects me in a plethora of different ways, actually. So by your standard, once again, that it can hurt your fee-fees, it hurts my fee-fees if you don't call me a Lord, and it has a wide-ranging set of effects on me. So
my apologies in advance. I just need a little bit of time, right? Longer than like 10 seconds if I can. If I can just please have that. Okay? I just need
like
everybody
60 seconds.
All right, yes. So here's a paper from PubMed. I've linked one of your moderators to please post this also in side chat so people can see it. This is an example of the neuroanatomy of the transgender identity, a mega analytic findings from the Enigma Transgender Persons Working Group, right? Under the results, you could see transgender persons differed significantly from cisgender persons with respect to their subcortical brain volumes and surface area, but not cortical thickness. Contracting the four groups, transgender males, transgender women, cisgender men, and cisgender women, we observe the variety of patterns not only depended on the direction of the gender identity, as in towards male or towards female, but also on the brain measure as well as the brain region examined. There is a literal physical understanding of the existence of trans people. That is exactly what this paper is telling you. Okay? And so now that we understand that empirically it is a thing, right? It's not just your fifis. It's not being called Lord, right? We can move on to like the actual argument, right?
All right, well, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm empirically a Lord. That's actual fact. But
Give me a paper.
Amanda, let me ask you. I'll actually send the documentation off to James if you'd like. But
no, share it now for everybody.
I don't have it on me right now, but I can get it sent. That's for sure. And
no, I want it sent now, right? Otherwise, I don't believe you, right? Because you said that you were self-harming, but you don't have anything on your arms.
I want to give Jake a chance.
Right? You're a liar. You're a liar.
All right.
So is a trans person lying if they don't have their DNA test?
Fogel, I don't know why you don't believe me, because this is my identity, and you're meant to just believe me. If somebody identifies,
that's not how this works.
Identifies as a rubber ducky, Fogel, would you affirm their identity if it said that they were going to really hurt themselves if they wanted to be identified as a rubber ducky? Would you affirm that?
I had to put him in mute. I can give him a chance to answer, but of course, it might be more than one word that he uses to respond. Go ahead, 1stAmender.
This is ridiculous. Like, I have to sit here and I have to argue.
Answer the
with these
question,
freaking
Fogel.
No, I'm tired of dealing with these right-wing chuds day in and day out.
Not even
They sit there and
right-wing,
argue the
Paul.
same
Paul.
stupid right-wing
Hold on.
argument
Speech.
talking
All
points,
right.
and they don't
Let's
actually
give
argue real
First
freaking
Amender.
points. I bring up real, actual, empirical basis behind the point. You can't rebut it. I bring up how Lord is not the same thing as talking about someone's gender identity. I bring up how a person's respecting someone's gender identity doesn't actually
Fogel,
can
you're
actually cause physical
trying.
harm to the person, and it is not the same when being called Lord. You asshole. You're just
Fogel,
being a dick. That's
listen.
all you are. You don't
Fogel,
have an
all right.
argument. Present
Fogel,
your
you want
paper
to-
or shut up.
Okay, listen, Fogel, I understand. that you're
Present your
angry.
paper or
All
shut
right,
up.
hold on. We have to
Fogel.
give Jake a chance.
Present.
Is that what you would say?
Fogel, listen.
All right, let's give Jake
So-
a chance to speak.
First Amender needs to respect that a strong, independent lord is talking here, and he needs to sit down and listen and get educated. His bigotry is obviously very upsetting watching this. The fact that he won't respect Jake's proper identity as being called Lord. I'm sorry, Lord Jake. He's not respecting it. He's not respecting his identity. The bigotry is just coming off of my string. I am literally shaking. I just can't believe that this is allowed on YouTube. That the hatred that First Amender is spewing. What First Amender doesn't understand is that no one is denying that trans people exist. Like, we know that gender dysphoria is an actual thing. No one's denying that. The problem we have is that you're trying to force people. You're trying to force things now because of it. So now, not only it's going beyond just being polite of man, just calling a man a woman and vice versa. It's beyond just being polite. But now you want them to be able to, you want men to be able to use women's restrooms because of this. You want men to be able to play in women's sports because of this. You want men to be able to serve a prison sentence in women's prisons. Like, these are all tangibly harmful to women, young girls, what have you. And that's where the line got crossed. If it just stuck to, hey, be respectful and call people by their proper pronouns, like, yeah, obviously some people might have a problem with it, but it should be up to them whether they want to do it. But no, you want to force people into being politeness or else. And it's going beyond just calling people pronouns. It's actually now going to where women are being harmed by this. And you're putting women in danger.
I want to ask you if you would hold a transgender person to the same standard, Fogel, because clearly you want me to show evidence of my identity, and actually that is adding to the systemic discrimination that the Lord community faces on a daily basis. So would you ask a transgender person to show you their documentation if they didn't pass? If it was a man who looked like a man and didn't pass as a woman, but he claimed to be a woman, would you ask them for documentation, or would you just accept it?
Present your paper or shut up. Where
right,
do you
let's go on
see
to something
the
new.
empirical basis
Okay.
I
of
want to go
being
over
called Lord
to
exhibiting
Alex.
itself
Okay,
at a
so
neurochemical
let's go.
level?
I hate to
Just
be
to be
Show
clear,
it.
let's
Show
let's
it.
go over
Provide
to
it.
all right, gentlemen,
Provide it. I
we're gonna
want
kick over.
actual fucking paper. It's so
appreciate your
frustrating
guys'
that I have to sit here and deal.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's nothing personal, First Amender.
Jake and First Amendment, y'all gotta make
The
a
Mob
note.
wants more blood. We have to go back to First
Listen,
Amender.
First Amender will be the best man at my wedding. He's a great guy, and I think potentially a best bud of mine.
I think the problem is
it's
he
just
won't
on this
call you
particular
my lord.
issue we don't particularly agree. But we're like Seth MacFarlane. What's his name again? Jonah. We're like Jonah Hill and McLovin in Superbad, just trying to go to parties together and stuff. We're two peas in a pod.
I have no idea what this has anything to do with the actual topic at hand.
So,
I've
Jake,
shown you papers regarding
just extending an olive branch.
the neurobiological links of being transgender, right? Obviously, there's nothing of the sort regarding being called Lord, so it is disanalogous. So we can leave that, right?
I wanna
But
ask Jake a question.
understanding that a person doesn't choose their neurochemistry or their neurobiology. So if they feel that they are that, and that let's say that they are receiving gender dysphoria by not being gendered their proper gender, right? Then yeah, what you're doing is that you're revoking their very identity and their dignity. And so therefore it would be hate speech. You are deliberately trying to misgender them in order to get an ire out of them, in order to frustrate them, right? That's what you're doing. And you doing exactly that, trying to want to be called Lord.
Sure,
I have
I'll
a
even
question for-
engage.
So, First Amender, the problem with your logic, though, is I'm going to get 3 trans people in front of you. I'm going to line up 3 trans people. One of them actually suffers from gender dysphoria. One of them is just a creep that wants to prey on women. And the other one is just doing it because they have some kind of fetish. Okay? Can you tell me which one is which? Can you tell me which one has the gender dysphoria? Well, you can't. Unless they show some documentation that they got psychologically evaluated by a psychiatrist or whatever, or proof that they got the downstairs surgery or something. Which means that you would have to actually ask for proof which one actually suffers from the gender dysphoria. However, you don't do that because that would be disrespectful. So you have to let all 3 of these people into a woman's restroom, or else you could potentially be doing harm to the one that actually suffers from the gender dysphoria. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And so when Jake sits here and Lord Jake sits here and says, you need to respect my gender identity, you go, show me the papers, show me the papers. Well, you wouldn't do that to a trans person. You wouldn't be there going, show me your papers and show me that you're actually suffering from this. You wouldn't do that. So how come you're doing it to Jake? It doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, Lord Jake. Why would you be doing that to Lord Jake? It doesn't make any sense. As Lord Jake said, you wouldn't hold trans people to that standard, so why are you holding him to that standard? It's the same logic. All you keep saying is, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It absolutely is the same thing. But all you people, when we bring up these scenarios, you always go, it's not the same thing. Well, why not? Well, just because. I say so.
Yes, I'll even engage with what you've just said, First Amender. So if it is about that, first of all, I don't care about the neurochemical. It actually doesn't make a difference in this regard, because just say somebody has a very strong Christian or Muslim belief, if they're a very religious person, and for that reason, they don't want to call this person by their fake gender or by their
use
fake,
they them
fake
pronouns.
sex
It's not that
identity.
big of a deal.
Anyways,
Use they them. There's nothing in the Bible or the Quran or the Tanakh or in the Bhagavad Gita that says, I like the adham, but again, there's nothing, just use they them. It's not that hard. Like, just don't be a dick. But I'm pretty sure in multiple of the religious texts, it literally does tell you to not be a dick.
Hold on one
Treat
second.
you as you would like to be treated, right?
I understand.
Okay, just to be sure we can hear each of you. I do want to kick it into 60-second timers here. So Jake, you got 60 seconds. Go ahead.
So I know McLovin is terrified of his argument, and I can see why, and that's why he started to try and filibuster the debate, and he's just given me the finger, which I think is actually probably might be considered hate speech with his logic. But anyways, if somebody does hold very strong religious beliefs, and they don't want to use bad English and say they, them, which is just bad English, by the way, and they don't want to call somebody by their fake gender identity based on their feelings, and if that is the case, and if they feel a deep anguish about having to do that, and if there are billions of people on Earth who would suffer this same anguish as there are, and that's provable, then if it makes them really upset, and if it makes them feel like they are oppressed, and if they are actually existing in somewhat of a minority, then by your own standard, then you would be engaging in hate speech by trying to make them affirm, or by trying to make them affirm your gender.
Okay, you got 60 seconds as well for 1stAmender.
No, because I've already explained that. I've explained it directly. I've made you understand how this works. I've explained the entire concept to you. For some reason, you completely just ignore it and just double down on wanting to be a dick. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say to you. It's such a shame to see. Yeah, you're enacting in hate speech, and yes, I'm enacting in hate speech right now towards right-wing chuds. I hate right-wing chuds. I hate them so much, and I wish that they would, like, I don't know, pick up a book and read instead of like watching Matt Walsh and Fox News all day and getting their opinions from that. Pick up a neurochemistry book, pick up a neurobiology book, pick up a psychology book, pick up a fucking gender studies book, pick up literally any fucking book, any freaking book, so that way you could stop with the stupid arguments.
Can I pick up Matt Walsh's book? What is a Woman? Can I read that one to better explain things to me?
Any book whatsoever would disprove what we're saying.
60 seconds.
That's not true.
Yeah, he didn't make an argument. That's the problem, though, here, James. He actually didn't make an argument. He just said, I hate right-wing chuds. Oh, I hate right-wing chuds because I can't
Yes,
get
I
laid."
do, because they're
that's all
like
he said.
you, and they like to be hateful towards people.
Women
and when
don't
I
like
bring
me,
up
so-
the actual facts behind
That's all
it,
he
they
basically
completely
said.
ignore it, and then they could
All
just
right.
double and triple and quadruple down.
Okay.
Kind of like you, First Amender. I mean, we're bringing up valid arguments, and then you ignore it, and then you double, triple, quadruple down, and then you're actually saying that you hate right wing chuds. So you're actually engaging in hate speech. You're saying you hate a group of people. You're actually more hateful than us. So like, listen, even if we're all just a bunch of hateful people, what makes you any different, Amender? First Amender, sorry. Remember, he's the first Amender. But what makes you any different, though? You know, if you hate us because we're hateful, well, you're hateful as well. What makes you better than us? It's just that you feel like you're better than us because you feel that your morals are better than our morals. It's just all subjective. It's all up for your fifis. You have a moral superiority complex, and that's why you get so frustrated when we don't bow down to what you're saying. Because us not bowing down and saying, yes, the First Amender, we agree with you, well, that makes us hateful people because we don't agree to your morals, which you feel are superior to ours. So this was an over hour-long debate. I found this on Rattlesnake TV, but I think you could also find it on Modern Day Debate. I will link the original video down below. What did you think of this video today? How do you think First Amender did? This is like, are the trans issue like the secular humanist issue is such a losing argument because you're trying to argue. There's just no winning with it. You've lost this debate like a long time ago. We voted in November. We voted against this type of ideology along with a bunch of other things. It's a losing argument. You lost. Like, men can't become women nor vice versa. And you shouldn't force us to use certain pronouns just because of fifis. And by the way, I personally don't mind being polite to a trans person and calling them by their respective pronouns if they're a nice person. I thought Lord Jake did a great job here using his this analogy to prove just how ridiculous this logic is. But how do you think he did today? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you enjoyed seeing First Amender get triggered and cry like a baby. And if you want to see more debates like this, I have a whole bunch more content on the screen that I think you guys will enjoy.